Welcome back to another episode of the Top Dogs podcast here on the Field of 68 Media Network. And I know that you can't see their faces because they are your favorite anonymous burners on Yukon Twitter. Yes, it is Mr. Hotballs and Hurley Mania. I got them both here. We are talking about Yukon basketball. We're talking about whether or not we're going to go back to back, and we're going to talk about a new venture that these two gentlemen have found a way to put together. I know, as crazy as it sounds, the two knuckleheads that do spaces until 2:30 in the morning after every single game have found a way to be moderately successful in their daily lives, I guess is a way to phrase it. So, gentlemen, how we doing? Hurley Mania, Mr. Hotballs. Good to see you guys.
Thanks for having us, Rob.
Yeah, it's great to be here, Rob. It's just really nice to finally sell out.
It feels
People
good.
are like, are you really selling out? Look, we're selling out. We're on your show, dude.
Yes. All right. So talk to me about why you're here. Talk to me about what you're doing. Talk to me about the spaces. Talk to me about the podcast. Talk to me about everything. You guys have this new business plan, how you're going to disrupt everything that happens on major media, right? Taking ESPN down?
We are literally doing the Prestige Worldwide pitch meeting, but in real life. I'll let Hotballs can speak more to it than I can.
No, I mean, everybody was like, you got a nice audience. And what should we tell them the brief story of it? Obviously started this a couple of years ago, just hopping on.
I was going to say, I want the origin story of Spaces. How did this come about?
Yeah, so we started this, I guess, a couple of years ago, just as a couple of goons that wanted to talk about the game and play all around with some new technology on the tweeting machine, and it just sort of caught on. I don't know if there's any like real grand strategy behind it, but the way the tool works, you can use it like a sports talk radio show, and so that's what we kind of did on the fly, and went from a couple hundred to a couple thousand, and now we're doing in the 5 digits in terms of listens. And it's been wild to kind of watch the whole thing grow. I mean, some of the people that end up spending time in there is wild, including you, Rob. So the times that people spend time in there is also wild, but it's been fun to kind of grow along with it, mature the show. And this has been kind of the next step. So, trying to kind of take things to the next level, give our listeners a better overall experience. Kind of irony behind all of this is Hurley Mania and mine's primary background out of school, which is overrated, but out of school was sports journalism for both of us. And here we are much later in life, kind of meandering through the woods, and we're back where we started, and have something hot, have something that's fun, and can't wait to share what we've got coming up here in March.
I do like how you said you let the show mature. That's I don't know if that's necessarily the word that I would use to talk about.
No,
Yukon
this
Twitter.
is it maturing, if you can believe it. What also plays a role in this is that the passion for the fan base is still there. While you may have abandoned them in the AAC years, Rob, some of us were still going to 9 p.m. Sunday night games against Tulsa because we truly had nothing better to do. And, the passion's still there. But also, the elephant in the room, it helps that the team's not 18 and 11 fighting for a 5 seed. Like, we start doing it, and then last year they decided they're just never going to lose a non-conference game unless the building's 7,000 degrees and Cam Spencer can't walk and Steph Castle can't play. So it's been the passion of the fans, obviously the team being awesome, and also the unfortunate state. When I grew up, there was sports talk on WTIC every night. It was really like an amazing show. I entered there. It was actually about a 12-minute show that they fit into an hour of ads and news and weather. But, now that's gone, and folks are just as passionate as ever about the team, especially when it's this good. And I'm appreciative to everyone that listens that we are apparently an outlet and a way to bring them in and take on callers to talk about this awesome team. So it's been a timing thing, and we've been fortunate, and people seem to like it, Rob. And now we've got the folks at Autograph on board. Appreciate our sponsors, the Feel Good Labs, coming on board, and we'll see where this goes. We're just really excited for it, and also excited it's the best time of the year too.
Yeah, it's I know you guys have talked about this at length before, and it's something where it's part of the reason why the Field of 68 has been able to work is you see all these major media corporations kind of divest themselves of the sport of college basketball. And at least my theory is, I don't know how you guys feel about it, is that the passion of the fan base is it's kind of, I don't want to say it's diluted, but it's spread out, right? Whereas in football, there's basically what, like 10 to 12 fan bases that you really need to be able to cater to in college football that really, really matter. The Alabamas, the Georgias, the Notre Dames, teams at that level, right? Whereas in college basketball, there are 70 to 80 high major teams that have really passionate fans, but it's not like you can do one story or one highlight or one thing on one team and be able to get the same numbers that you would if you did the same thing on, let's just say, Alabama. So I can understand why, if you don't want to just talk about Duke and their best player over and over and over again, it might get a little tiresome for some of these major media networks on what they're going to focus on. So I do appreciate the effort that you guys, and I think I've told you this, but the effort that you guys have put in to help grow something for a fan base that is passionate. And the other cool thing is to see other programs and other fans in the Big East kind of like start doing the same thing. You know, I'll be opening up Twitter at midnight on like a Wednesday, and I'll see like, this is our reaction spaces for this fan base, and there's a Kansas State one going on over here, and there's this one going on over here. So I'm not going to call you guys trendsetters because I will never give you the credit for that, but it's been nice to see you be able to carve out this niche, because college basketball needs it, man. There's so many passionate fans and so many people love this stupid sport.
Yeah, and we to be fair, there are folks that have helped us, like, as much as we dislike Villanova or Marquette, but like full 40 Chris and what he's done has been tremendously helpful. Roll blob guys at Xavier, the paint touches guys at Marquette. I'm just trying to think of a few folks, but yeah, if you're over serving a smaller audience, I know this is brought, like, if you're listening to Top Docs, you're like, why are they talking about this? But we're just here to serve UConn fans, talk about UConn, because if you've come to us, you've probably gone through every channel on TV and everything on the internet, and you're just sick about reading about Kyle Filipowski and court stormings and expanding the tournament or not. And we talk about those things on our show, but we lead with the UConn basketball game you just watched that you want to talk about. So that's why I think we found an audience, as much as being complete weirdos, absolute weirdos.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is too, you know, and both of you guys talked about this, you know, where the terrestrial media got hit the hardest was locally, you know, and, you know, back in the day we had the TIC show, you know, women's games were on CPTV and they would do a show every week about the team, you know, WFSB or some of the local, you know, television stations would do, you know, periodic specials here and there. This doesn't exist anymore. You have the number one team in college basketball, the reigning national champions, you know, head coach who's probably the hottest name in the sport right now, who also happens to be like a one-man crazy factory in all the best ways. And, you know, it's really entertaining, aesthetically pleasing college basketball going on right in our backyard without any pro team competition, and nobody's talking about it. And
yeah,
fewer people are writing about it, you know? So I think, you know, just in a weird way, we've kind of backed into this space where we're able to, you know, serve a pretty big fan base in our own backyard. And a lot of the Big East, you know, fan bases have tethered themselves to our show a little bit. And they're as much characters in this whole thing as we are. So I think it proves a point, right, that there's still a market for folks out there, but the way and manner in which, you know, folks have to chop wood to get their college basketball content now has just changed very drastically. And we're pretty flattered that we've kind of backed our way into being able to serve that need.
Yeah, the thing that always gets me when I actually drive into work, I primarily work from home, but when I go to work, I get onto 84 and it's right next to the Hartford Current building, which is empty because they've gutted that place so bad they sold the building out, and the building's just standing there empty. And that is like the main news source in the state of Connecticut, and it's just an empty building now. And it's, in a weird way, it's motivating because, like, it's not like the fan base is left or the passion is left. So anything we can do to help that, when, you know, the folks at the Current and a lot of the other local media outlets just have no shot because they've just had their legs chopped off from under them. Any help we can provide for the team that we all love, it's been awesome. And I appreciate it. It's I feel like a responsibility with it. It's weird, but somehow it's the sword of fate has landed on the two dumbest people you will ever meet on the internet.
Which, come on, man, you're not the dumbest people. I've met a lot of dumb people on the internet. You're not, you are well, Hurley Mania definitely is. A hot ball is still left to be seen.
Other than Jeff Goodman, fine.
Look, only one person on this call right now has had their plumber's crack shown on national television, so we We can,
Yeah, that
we
was
can
the
go.
moment I think Robert really blew up when we had a super slow-mo of uh, Bill Raftery recapping my co-host showing his ass on national television. That
Oh,
was the moment when this went to a new place.
One shining moment, as they say.
oh yes. All right. Who's the craziest person, like the biggest name, the most famous person, one person where you're sitting here like, I can't believe that this dude is sitting here, or this woman, or this person, or this former player is sitting here in our spaces, listening to us talk about whatever the hell we're talking about right now.
My favorite moments are when I like just sort of will casually dig through the listeners just to kind of see who's in there, because I don't really pay a ton of attention unless they're kind of in that queue. And I'll scroll down and there's Travis Knight. Or like I'll scroll down and like some random player that played on the team, Kent Facey's hanging out in there at 2:30 in the morning. Those are the ones that just kind of always get me. Like that blows my mind. Because I mean, I remember going to Jim Calhoun basketball camps in the early 90s, and Travis was one of my coaches. Like, talk about one of those like full circle. Yeah.
Travis
Talk
Knight
about one of those.
basketball camp right there.
Yeah, I probably dunked on your face there. But it's just, those are the ones that are kind of most surreal because those are such like vivid memory captures from my childhood. But we've had the majority leader from the state house hanging out in the spaces. We've had United States senators. The athletic
That's
director.
terrifying to me. That is honestly
Yeah, that was
terrifying.
my
The people that are going to control the next step of our government and the next step of this country are sitting
Yeah.
there listening to you guys
Listen
and
to
being indoctrinated with your bullshit.
Yeah,
I
the best part is
balanced
when they pop off. The best part is when they pop off about college basketball. I'm like, yes, you got the talking points. Let's go. So it's wild though. But I mean, we've seen some crazy folks in there, and we even get some folks that call in, and it's been wild to kind of watch the whole thing go.
Yeah, and no disrespect to you, Ram, what you guys do, because I mean, Fanta is one. Fanta's interacted with us. He's been great. But also, like after the North Carolina game, we were doing the space on the Upper West Side at like 1 a.m. And
Curry Hicks Sage's
like,
basement.
yeah, yeah, you're a good personal friend, Curry Sage's basement. And then like two of the CBS guys jump in.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're in our show? I mean, you go nuts, but it was kind of a through the looking glass thing. But yeah, it's been the best is that it's never like Rip Hamilton. I love that it's like Travis Knight or Kenton Facey. It's like the cult hero guys who are in there. And it's just a way to bring a community together in a very weird place, but it works.
That's a great segue because I did have this written down. I wanted to ask you guys your favorite. Not your favorite UConn player ever, your favorite random UConn player ever. The guy that you are like, I don't know why he will forever be seared in my memory, but he is forever seared in my memory.
Well, I'll be clear, this isn't my favorite, but one to me is this is a wild one. Sammy Amazian, walk on the 05 team, who's French, who becomes a successful French stand-up comic. Who played in like several, like he was a walk-on, but he was in that level a little above walk-on, kind of like, so he played probably more than he should have. And it's like his entire career path to get to UConn, what leads him to there, what leads him to stand-up comedy. I have some questions about him. That's a name that jumps out at me because that's a weird one. I wanted to pick something unusual. Yeah, that's
I'm just impressed that you know that. Like you're so into UConn hoops that you follow the walk-on stand-up careers just to support them.
Well, it was such a weird time. That was also when I was at UConn. I was at UConn 02 to 06. So like I feel like everybody who went there, and I love that UConn's open to people who didn't go to UConn, like you two guys. I don't judge a little bit. But I love that. But when you're there, you like hyper focus on the entire team to an unhealthy degree. I think that's true of all fans of all college basketball teams. So that was what led me to that. I mean, Ed Nelson's another one. Seeing Ed come back a couple weeks ago.
That was cool.
And just being like an older dad now and getting the questions about pickup truck. I have the whole album. I knew people. I'm going to leave it at that. I love that Ed's just a regular old dad now. I think it's awesome.
Opals, you got anyone?
Yeah, for me, Ruslan and Yakin.
God, I almost named him.
Yeah, Ruslan and Yakin. Like, first of all, what a name, right? But a guy that just had the best participatory seat for arguably our best 2, maybe 3-year run up to now. We'll talk about that in a second. In a long time. I just love the dude's game. He was a bruiser. He was we always had this like wild international player, whether it was a Daron Shepard, an out of Hennefield. Ruslan came in with a little pomp and circumstance initially. Didn't turn into one of those guys, but always a guy for some reason that just always stuck out to me. Favorite player, probably Stanley Robinson, because he was like watching a human and one reel just over and over and over and over again. But those would probably be the two that just stick out to me probably more than anybody.
Yeah, for me, it's Brian Fair. And it's Brian Fair because he is the first UConn player I ever remember pretending to be, right? I would think I was 6 years old and I had one of the basketball hoops that you stuck on like the metal door. We had a metal front door and you stuck it on the metal front door with the suction cups. And I just remember there being like 6 years old in my living room being like, Brian Fair. That's the first one that I remember. Him and Daron Sheffer, that 91-92 team was the first one that I kind of fell in love with. What was your moment when you knew that you were hooked? For me, it was 96 Big East tournament, Ray Allen, the shot when he probably traveled. I think we could be honest about it now. He probably traveled, but it was the floater that bounced in and went in off the backboard, and then Junkyard Dog missed the 3 layups at the other end. First Big East tournament title. I was 10 years old at the time. I had managed, they were down, I think 11 with 3 minutes left. And I managed to convince my dad to let me stay up to watch the end of the game when he thought it was already over, which turned out pretty well. That seared something in my memory in that moment.
Yeah, for me, it's the same answer. It's the first UConn game I remember start to finish, like fully being invested in. I watched a little before then, but like the first one I was fully invested in. I remember where I was. The one of that, it's that game. The other one for me would be the Khalid game at Pitt where he jumps up on the scores table. I remember vividly like where I was watching that entire game and just thinking they could come back the whole game because of how great that team was, and also not really buying that Pitt team. When it turned out it was kind of a precursor of what was to come with Pitt, including screwing up at the end. Yeah, so for me it's the 96 game with Ray in the shot. That's the one that always is seared in for me. I know Hot Balls which one it is for you. It's probably something from like 1991.
So I think I was a little bit of a slower acquisition to like UConn obsession. My first game, I want to talk about how far the program's come. A 49-48 loss, December 29th, 1986 in the Connecticut Mutual Classic to the University of Hartford. And that was my first game. I remember Dad just getting tickets for Christmas because it was a random sports team to go to. But right around that time was the height of Whaler Mania. That's the 1 or 2 years where the Hartford Whalers were very good. Hartford hosted the NHL All-Star game. And before there was always kind of that weird tension between UConn football and UConn basketball. There was weird tension between Hartford Whalers fans and UConn Huskies fans. And, it wasn't probably really until the NIT run in 88 that I started to go, this looks like it could be interesting. And in 1990, you couldn't help but get completely caught up in that. The first season that I just knew I was in it for the long run, was completely obsessed with absolutely everything that was going on, was probably 1994. And the infamous Dimitri Hill, Dimit Hook, Sweet 16 game down in Miami. And I remember being down in Florida at the time. My grandparents used to rent a house down in Florida. We used to go down there and just like lying on one of those cold Florida tile floors after Danielle had missed all of those free throws down the stretch to knock us out. And what was, in my perception, a wide open path to the national title game. I'm thinking to myself, like, how on earth could we possibly win this tournament? Little did I know, but it was that losing moment. I think sometimes it's the torture that sucks you in. And at that early moment in time, that's when I was on for life. And since then, it's been, an absolute obsession of mine. It occupies the entirety of my November to April of my adult life.
It is amazing how somehow, despite 5 national championships, reigning national champions, #1 seed, if you mention Mississippi State or Florida to my co-host, it's just
traumatic event.
it's still
George
the pain
Mason
is
one was
still
worse for
there.
me. It was the Mason one that was the worst for me.
I was
Because that
there.
yeah, that was one where I was counting it. I was like, yes, this is done. We are in the Final Four. Look at who's left in this Final Four right now. It was I think it was LSU, Florida, and
UCLA.
UCLA. Yeah, and none of those teams put the fear of God into anybody. I was sitting there like, it's going to happen. There's going to be another one. I'm in college. I'm running my mouth to everybody.
Yep.
Yeah, that was
Yeah, I was the student radio guy. So I was courtside for it. I'm staring right now. I won't do this bad podcast or dubbed YouTube content. I'm staring at the 2006 Washington D.C. regional credential, and in a weird way, it haunted me. And you know what I have hanging over it now? I have my ticket from last year's Final Four. It all came full circle. Because I was also at the '09 Final Four. It was the only other one I went to. Was the one time they lost.
Yeah.
So last year
they would have won that though. Like that if it wasn't for Jerome Dyson, right?
I'm the one guy that says no, only because I saw the absolute steamroller that was that Carolina team. And also it's easier for me to think that way, that maybe the generational UNC team might have been too much. But yeah, that it's been the last year, especially because they beat Larinaga last year too. For me personally, it was this is nice. This is this stupid grudge I can let go.
What's going on, everybody? Rob Doster here from the Field of 68, and I need to tell you about a partnership that we just signed with Autograph, a fandom company co-founded by the GOAT himself, Tom Brady.
Brady in the gun. Touchdown, Patriot!
I can't deal with my clogged Twitter feed anymore. Every single tweet gets 3 responses from some Twitter bot promoting gambling picks. I just want to read the articles, man. I just want to read stories. I just want to listen to my favorite podcast. I just want to consume the content that breaks down my favorite college basketball team, and I want to do it all in one place. Now I can with the new Autograph Rewarding Fandom app. That place exists. And here's the best part about it. The more content you consume about your favorite team and the more reward points that I rack up, the better my chances are going to be to score one-of-a-kind fan merch, discounted tickets to games, or other awesome items and experiences on the Autograph app. So go download it, use that referral code F68, that's F68, and get access today. And hey, if you do, maybe I'll get my buddy Tom to send you a thank you note. As you guys know by now, we've partnered with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we'll have special offers for the listeners and the viewers of the Field of 68 each and every week of the college basketball season. We have a special offer that will be available starting on Tuesday, January 9th and running through Monday, February 12th, the morning after Super Bowl 58. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, in honor of the big game, you can use the bonus code FIELD158 and you'll get $158 in free bets on your first wager with BetMGM, regardless of whether or not you win that first bet. Here's how you make it work. Download the BetMGM app. Sign up using the bonus code FIELD158. Deposit at least $5 and place your first wager on any game. You'll receive $158 in bonus bets regardless of the outcome of your bet. Just make sure that you use that bonus code FIELD158 when you sign up. And remember, BetMGM is now available under one wallet in select states. As a New Jersey resident, this is super convenient when I have to go cover games in New York or Philly, which happens quite a bit. When you cross state borders, you just log into your existing account and fire away. You don't have to create separate accounts in each state. It's easy, it's simple, it's clean. And most importantly, we have some fun stuff coming up for the heart of the college basketball season. Bet insurance tokens, college hoops odd boosts, and my favorite, a nice juicy parlay boost. So download the BetMGM app and sign up today. Field 158. All right, let's talk about this year's team because I think that they have, I said this the other day, I think they have as good of a chance as anybody to be able to repeat since the 2007 Final Four. I didn't realize this till I looked it up. Do you know that there's no one that has been the reigning national champ has made it past the Sweet 16 since Florida in 2007? And I think it's been since Duke in 2016 that they even made it out of the second round. They even got to the second weekend of the tournament. I feel you never feel good about winning a title, right? Like you can never, given the nature of the tournament, but hot balls, I feel like this team has as good of a chance as anybody to be able to get it done. If it happens and you are in Phoenix, what are you doing? Where's the celebration? How crazy are you going? Are we ever going to see you again? Are you just riding off into the sunset?
That might be it. You might just have to bury me under a cacti somewhere and forget I ever existed. No, I mean, I don't know. It'd be amazing. I mean, it's hard for me to even process that because it's such an absurd thing to accomplish. I mean, I would argue just because of the variation and the chance and all the stupidity that kind of has to happen for it to happen once, never mind twice in a row. I think it's the hardest thing to do in sports outside of the Triple Crown in horse racing. Winning back-to-back national titles in college basketball, because you're going through 6 of the best teams in the country every year in a one-off scenario where absolutely anything can happen. You just have one bad night. Some team catches fire, does something that they never do. We found that out many times, even recently. You don't have a shot. So, I mean, it's a pretty wild feeling. I mean, I think this is definitely the team that's had the best shot to repeat going back to Florida, which really says something. And it's something that, this program's never accomplished. I'd be over the moon. It'd be an absolutely incredible achievement for them to do that.
Yeah, I'm just now from you saying that, I was laughing because I'm envisioning if it happens, Mr. Hotball's actually trying to debate a horse on which is more difficult, winning the Triple Crown or going back to back in basketball. Like they're on a stage, they're making their points, and he's just screaming at a horse. Yeah, it feels like they have an incredible shot at it. The stat you mentioned has been in the back of my mind to actually like keep my feet on the ground a little bit, that this is, despite how easy they made it look last year, this is actually really hard to win once, yet alone twice. I think the depth obviously gives them a play. And also the thing we've mentioned a lot is how many different ways they have to beat teams, how many for them to lose on a night, as we've seen, like the number of things that have to go wrong. It is possible. It's not like it can't happen. We're eyes wide open that this team isn't perfect, but I don't think there's a team in the country where the number of things you have to get right to beat them is a longer list. I think Purdue and Houston are excellent teams, but I think with each of them, it's not as long of a list. Like even right now, the current Huskies last couple of weeks, like Alex Caravan's in a shooting slump, but they have Cam Spencer. They have Steph Castle starting to show that he can at least keeps teams honest, even if they dork him. That's for you, Rob. That he can make shots. We've seen flashes of excellence out of Samson Johnson this year, even when Donovan gets into foul trouble. That's kind of my one concern, is that scenario. But this is a team that seems, with their depth, with their different options, and with their playbook, like they've got as good of a chance as anybody. It's going to be really hard.
They just don't have a weakness. That's the thing. Like if you look at Houston, right, you can kind of poke holes and say, well, they're not great offensively. They rely a little too much on the offensive glass. They don't really have a big wing. They play some little guards. Their big guys are aggressive and long and athletic, but they're not really like that big. If you put Donovan Clingan next to Juwan Roberts, Donovan Clingan is going to have 6 inches on him. You look at Purdue, and you could very clearly circle the 4 spot and say we can get up in and pressure these guards. Like there's specific weaknesses with all of these other teams. Tennessee is basically a one-man show when it comes down to it. Arizona has Caleb Love and Kai Boswell. I don't know if you could trust them. There's nothing about this UConn team where you can point to them and say, okay, that is specifically what you have to do to be able to beat them. It's kind of like you got to do some stuff and hope that they have one of those nights where shots aren't going down, Donovan's in foul trouble, and it's just you happen to catch them on the right day. I don't think there's a specific weakness that you could take advantage of, which is kind of crazy to think about, right?
Yeah. I think the way that they get got, if they get got, is a guy like Connect goes nuts one night. Specifically, that's the sort of thing. Somebody goes like John Wallace style in '96. I still remember. I know it's Syracuse and we hate them, but like an all-time must-watch tournament run when just one guy single-handedly lifted an entire team on his back. I think that's going to have to be what happens in terms of beating UConn. That's why I have Tennessee as one of the teams I'm most scared about, per se, just because of what Dalton is and what he can do. But yeah, these other teams, like if the hypothetical Purdue matchup happens, I think they're an elite top end team, but just, I think physically when the two teams step on the court, it's going to be apparent very quickly that UConn at the guard spot has about a half foot on all of the Purdue guards, who I think are really good, but they're not very big. And one of the things that Dan has done to get the program to this point, stemming back to the New Mexico State loss, is he just decided he's never going to have like a small team at any position ever again. Love RJ Cole. He was great, but he had a height issue compared to big time guards once you get into the Big East and into the tournament. And this UConn team, their size at every position I don't know about you, hot balls. It's what I think makes them such a difficult matchup.
Yeah, and the fact that you have 5 guys that are capable of scoring 20 points on a night. You guys alluded to it before. Like, you just can't really leave anybody alone. You might be able to take one guy, maybe are able to take one card off the table, but you got 4 others that you got to worry about, and you're going to have a mismatch somewhere, and that guy's going to score 20, and that's probably going to be enough. And if UConn gets anything, I mean, if Sandiar is scoring 10 points a game off the bench, you're done. You're toast. So, I think that's the thing with this team, and they just kind of grind teams down. I mean, you talked about this on your show, Rob, where, last year, there was kind of that avalanche that would come out of nowhere, right? You just kind of just wait for it. Might happen in the first half, might happen in the second half, but it was like the other team was, holding a grenade with the pins pulled. It was just a matter of when it was going to go off. This year, they just kind of wear teams down. I mean, you look at the Villanova game the other night, and, like you pointed out, Villanova matches up okay with us pretty much across the board. They did a good job blowing up a lot of our, high screening action early on, switching, but, you got to keep doing it over the course of 40 minutes. And you just saw them get slower and slower and slower and slower. And it's not just the physicality of it and having to deal with those, oversized guards, but, Dan throws a lot of crap at teams. So there's also, having to have the mental acuity of being able to catch up and keep up with all the false actions and the different variations they have on 6,000 different plays. So it's just
the never ending running around screens that you have to do. Like, it looks so fucking miserable to try to guard them. Like, imagine having to chase Cam Spencer around screens. You got this dude who probably isn't that much faster than any of us, right? Who just keeps running and running and running and running and weaving, and it's going through here. There's an elevator here, and it's going up a curl here. And then he's run like a half mile in one half court set. And all of a sudden you lose track for like 1 second, and he gets a half inch of space, and boom, he bangs a 3 on you. Like,
yeah.
I fucking hate that dude.
It's stats can tell a lie, but they can also tell a story. The fact that UConn's like 340th in the country in tempo. We know Virginia's dead last, but in no universe would you say the UConn and Virginia offenses look remotely similar. I feel like with UConn, they just know that sooner or later you can't do this for 30 seconds. And the time when I first fully bought in a way to this team, to what they could be, was the Kansas game, when post-game Bill Self goes in there and he explains, he's like, I don't think people understand. If you try and man-to-man this team and not switch, it will not work. You just have to be able to switch everything. And Kansas did. And then a couple weeks later against Carolina, they tried. And for about 23 seconds, they could. And then something stupid would happen because they're college kids. They're 18 to 21. And somebody would be open. And that's the most amazing thing to me, is that this UConn team can just stay this focused and this disciplined and run that many motions. It's crazy to me, the amount of energy this team has.
Yeah, it's crazy to me they can remember all these plays. Like, just think about being in college and having a playbook that's like this thick and trying to remember all of it.
Remember, they were talking about the playbook being leaked last summer, and like, who the hell's sitting down and going through all that? Like that it was something like almost 100 pages plus.
There's lots of like the X's and O's nerds love UConn because what they run is just, it's so creative, and it's so no one is doing what they're doing. Right. Like they are creating new stuff on the fly, and it's not all like the actions that they're running. There's only so much you could do on a basketball court. Like, they're not reinventing the wheel, but it's like, how do you go from this to this? How do you go from like this zoom action into this down screen? How do you end up with Tristen Newton running off of a DHO? Like, it's just the way that they kind of get into their stuff. No one else is doing. So the creativity of it. I think Luke Murray's actually a mad scientist.
Yeah, and I think what a lot of what UConn does, and what's been impressive with the coaching staff, is they sort of run into a lot of the burning buildings that a lot of other college coaches tend to avoid, right? And Randolph talks about it on your show all the time. Rick Pitino complains about it all the time in press conferences. The hardest thing to do is to get your guys, especially when they're younger, to read scouting reports, right? To memorize the things that you're trying to get them to do. So for them to have this team that locked on all of those things that they do, I think that's the distinct, if you want to get corny and a little cheesy about the market inefficiency in college basketball, is really being able to drill all these things into guys. And it's just, again, it's really hard, again, physically, to keep up with this team for 40 minutes, let alone mentally. being able to pick up on all the actions that they run. And I just think, over and over and over, we've just seen teams sort of get ground down. Again, it's not the explosion that last year's team was, but it's much, much more like a vice grip, over a period of time. And, I remember watching the St. John's game. It had the same effect watching the Villanova game where you're like, man, it seems a little nip and tuck. It seems a little too close for comfort. You look up a minute later, they go from up 4 up to 5. You look up a minute later, now they're up 6 or 7. Look up a minute later, they're up 8 or 9. You look up a minute later, we're swimming right around the under 5, and you're like, holy crap, they're up 11, 12. They're in cruise control now. And so it's been really kind of interesting to see how this team skins the cat a little bit differently from last year's team, but it's just as effective.
Yeah, and the thing that blows my mind the most about it is, with all that time they take and all those motions, they don't get shot clock violations. Like they all 5 guys, they've got the internal clock at any time on the floor, which is nuts given how long they run sets. To have everybody have that awareness, to have nobody checked out or lost. And this is the part that gets clipped when it happens at some point. So Rob, apologies. But yeah, it's amazing to me how they can just all be on the same page. Dan talked about on game day. They do after Creighton, they did like an hour and a half film room. Like everybody's that invested. The team, or almost everyone's won a title and has, in most cases, nothing to prove. For them to be this invested and this driven to doing the things they have to do to be this way is the thing that impresses me the most. That there is just no settling for less. No, well, we won it last year with any of these guys. You'd think human nature, it would creep in with 18 to 21-year-olds, but they all want it. I feel like they all want it just as bad as they did a year ago when they hadn't won anything.
All right, so real quick, I just want to tell the story of last year's Final Four when Randolph Childress just completely owned you guys.
Yeah,
in a discussion and an argument and a debate. It was at McIntyre's in Houston, Texas, and it was our man Randolph Childress, who I think is going to be jumping in here in a second. Is that him, Randolph?
What's up, Rob?
I heard you jumping
on the Zoom without me, man. I heard you jumping on the Zoom without me. I heard my name was being mentioned on something. I had to come check it out. Who you working with right now? Who's out there?
We got
you know who it is, Randolph.
They said that they won the argument with you last year. They said that they owned you. They won the debate in the Final Four last year.
Nah. All I know is I have footage of somebody going home sleep. Just sleep. Yeah. I mean, snoring.
I had a great night.
I'm just
champions get their sleep. They talk about it all the time. You got to get your 8 hours.
Rob, it was like standing next to a jet engine with these two. It was, I was just, as someone who can't shut up and argues, I was in awe of these two going back and forth, screaming at 500 decibels about the ACC, mostly that. ACC Big East, it was incredible. It was just back and forth. It was like watching the 6 overtime game. It's like, when are these two going to be done?
I'll tell you what, when I woke up the next day after that week, I was so damn hoarse. I was like, man, I don't even want to talk. I was like, I ain't got nothing to say. Don't nobody ask me no questions. I ain't saying nothing for like a week.
You look like a sad, sad man in the post-game recap after we won the national championship.
Oh, I was.
That's the saddest I've ever seen you look. I've never seen a guy that obviously doesn't want to be there worse than you didn't want to be there.
I didn't. As much as I'm okay with UConn winning, I got it. Rob was just unbearable at the time. And now that they won, he won't be as bad. But Rob was. I couldn't deal with Rob. Rob had wore me out. And y'all finished off with what was left of me after that night.
If we get you two in the desert again, like Rob, I'm gonna need to get a shovel. Like, I don't even know.
Well, here's the thing. I was thinking about it, right? We're not even gonna have to do our show that night. What we'll do is we'll just give Randolph a mic, we'll give Hotballs a mic, we'll put a camera on him, we'll set him up for 3 hours, and everyone else can go hit the bar and we can
give us a personal bartender.
And there you go. We need a bartender. Yeah. Listen, we need a bartender and some food to come in, and then everybody else will follow through. We'll take care of the rest.
And hey, by the way, I just wanted to recap, just to come back to that conversation. Was I right or was I right about the Atlantic Coast Conference?
No.
I was right.
No.
I was so right.
Hey, Hotballs, ask him what seed he thinks Wake Forest is going to get this year.
I don't know. We'll see. I ain't asking him nothing, even though I'm sick right now.
I'd love for you guys to get a 9 seed in the East region.
Oh, now I tell you what, if that happens,
I'd love to drag you up to New York for a second straight week.
Who are you going to root for, Randolph? Because folks might not realize you have some investment here.
Listen, I'm going to be sitting there. It would be TV. It would be standing room only if that happens as a ninth seed. If they don't screw it up, I'm assuming they'll get a win. They better beat Virginia Tech or Clemson to get in. So we'll figure out and see how that goes.
All right, RC, get out of here, man. Go
All right,
enjoy
man.
the rest
All
of
right,
your
brother.
lunch.
All right,
Enjoy
buddy.
your yoga lessons, Randolph.
Y'all get me in trouble with the boss, man. All right, fellas.
He's going to yoga.
Yeah, that was maybe the most special thing at the Final Four.
Going to be stretching Randolph out, both legs, just that flexibility back right in time for the tournament.
That really was.
Watching those two just
let's set the table real quick. Just kind of explain the backstory of it. Like Randolph and Hot Balls had kind of been going back and forth on Twitter for a while. And it was playful. It was funny. It was good natured. It was like Big East is UConn a blue blood, Big East ACC, just whatever. You guys are going at it. And we finally, after it was Sunday night at the Final Four before the national title game, we were at McIntyre's. It was after our second show. Everybody was probably like 5 or 6 drinks deep. And you and RC sat down and said, all right, we're doing this. We're going to have this debate. And I think there were probably 20 people just kind of standing around the table and you two going at it nonstop, button heads, arguing about stuff. And this is what I remember is that I'm listening to you argue. I go to the bar. I go to get another beer. I get distracted. I talk to someone. I get dragged into like a game of Pop a Shot. I go back, get another drink. I'm like, oh, I wonder what Randolph and Hot Balls are doing. And I walk back like an hour and a half later, and you guys are no one has moved an inch. You just now have 3 empty glasses in front of you, and
there was more than 3 empty
arguing.
Glasses. Let's be honest. The one thing I do remember distinctly from that entire conversation was the waitress coming over to clean the table off and being like, "Oh my God," and it was
and then they closed the bar on that floor, Rob. So we all just went upstairs and it just resumed on a new. At no point did it occur to anybody, maybe maybe we'll call it a night. Maybe we'll agree to disagree. No, we're going to the second floor and we're going to finish this. And, nothing was resolved. It was great.
What was?
Hot Balls passed out in the car on the drive home.
It absolutely was resolved because I was right. Correct. All knowing.
Yeah, this started as Hot Balls making the argument about UConn as a blue blood, and as he's wont to do immediately, going right at Randolph. I think your entire school's conference isn't even real. Like just lobbing the nuclear weapon, like proportion of response there.
Right.
Yeah, no, that was wild to watch.
All right, I got one more real question for you guys. And then we can get out of here. I know you guys, I don't want to keep you here. I can literally keep you here for 3 hours talking about UConn, so I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, we're bad at short, so thank you.
The short doesn't work here. What would qualify for you guys as a successful season this year, right? One more win and UConn gets at least a share of a regular season championship for the first time since 2006. Is that good enough? Like just getting a Big East regular season title, if it means you don't win the Big East tournament, if it means like you lose in the Sweet 16 or something like that? Do you need to win the Big East? Is it getting back to the Final Four? Like what is a successful year this year in your mind? Because I go back and forth on this. I'm still kind of basking in the glow of winning a national title again. So I think that Dan is playing with house money, but I know that I have different expectations in a lot of these UConn fan base.
Yeah, I mean, he is playing with house money, but when you get to this point, when you're sitting at 25-3 and you're a top 3 team in a sport where everyone agrees there's 3 teams and then everyone else, it's kind of hard to make the house money argument. Like it will be disappointing if this doesn't go where we hope it does, but it won't be like devastating. I need him to win the Big East tournament. It's been too long. I need him to, at the very least, can you get to the title game? They haven't been back. They've had these crushing close losses on Friday every single year. And in a year where they're clearly the best team in the league and nobody would think they're the 3rd best team at this point in the league, they got to at least get there. And I think they got to win it. They win the Big East tournament, at least making the second weekend for me. I know it's not what we want, but to be really fair about it, that's an amazing accomplishment, especially given what you said about the history of teams who try and go back to back. if they don't win the Big East tournament, I really like. Is it weird to say they need to make a Final Four? It's greedy, but if we're gonna be a blue blood, let's be greedy, right? So that's kind of where I am at it. But and for anyone who thinks that's underselling, I'll ask you, when your heart is in your throat at the under 4 of the second NCAA tournament game, we're all living and dying, what would you sign up for? Because if that feels like I'm not asking for enough, it will feel like it then when we're all dying on the floor to just get past Wake Forest.
Yeah, I would say, it's when you have a chance to win a national championship, the national championship's a goal. And now, there's the rational side of me too. I mean, I've always been, as crazy as I am online, I think, on our show, I've always been a guy that's a little pump the brakes, when it comes to things like the NCAA tournament, not having expectations that are unrealistic, through the moon. I think anytime any team gets to the second weekend, it's more or less a successful season. But getting through those games, especially that second weekend, I think that Elite Eight, that Sweet 16 are the two toughest rounds. And there's just so much random stuff that can happen once you get to that point in the tournament. So, kind of rational hot balls says, the second weekend, I'm not jumping off a bridge. But we got a chance to win a second national championship. These things don't come by often, right? So I want to see us do it. I want to see us get to the Final Four. And I also don't want to say that because I don't want Coach to show up at my doorstep. So, I think that's what they constitute as a successful season this year. So I want to see that. Would love to see them win the Big East tournament at Madison Square Garden as well. For them, hopefully we can wrap up at least a share of the Big East regular season championship. We haven't won one of those since 2006.
Yeah, and they haven't won one outright this century, which is insane. I'm that greedy. I want that. I want them to be the sole Big East regular season champ because it's been too long.
You beat Seton Hall at home, you beat Providence on the road, which are two things that, let's be honest, they should be doing, and you got that. I'm kind of at the point where I think as long as you win one thing, Big East regular season, Big East tournament, national championship, I think that you can call that a successful season. You're hanging up some kind of banner somewhere, right? You're getting some kind of trophy, cutting down some kind of nets. I think that inside that locker room, if they don't win all three, the Big East regular season, the Big East tournament, and the national title, that the season is an utter disappointment and everybody needs to just go home and rethink what they're doing with their lives because they should not be doing this sport. I think that's the way that they are riled. They are wired. But I also am, and I say this all the time, I'm so damn appreciative of the fact that UConn is back in a position where this is what we're talking about, right? It's not like, oh God, we got to go on the road and play East Carolina and play South Florida. Like, do I care about the American Conference tournament at this point? Like, it's back where UConn is like the thing that you wake up thinking about, the thing you go to sleep thinking about, and the thing that you just can't wait for once April hits. Right. I'm very appreciative that we are back in a place where it can dominate our lives in a positive way.
Yeah. And the fact that the difference now is we're not talking about UConn getting in the tournament. We're talking about seeds. Like if you look at UConn seed history, we're talking about a 1 seed probably this year, a 4 seed last year. And that's where you see the progression. That's not about, are we going to make it? Now it's about how far are we going to go? And that's the biggest thing that Dan and his staff have brought back to this is that they are again at the very top table of the sport.
What I love about UConn basketball, I think above all else, and we always talk about like blue bloods and all that stuff. Like North Carolina ostensibly has been more or less the same thing for 60 years. The same flavor. Same thing with Kansas, the same kind of flavor. Duke, same kind of thing. UConn is like this wild multi-act play, right? That has played out over, 40-year period of time with all distinctly different versions of itself, sometimes within the same regime as a coach, right? Like I always kind of look at that late 80s, early 90s emergence very differently from the way I look at that late 90s to early 2000s transcendence into becoming a bona fide national title with contender with real legitimate credentials. And then obviously you have sort of that downslope into the American Athletic Conference, through the season where we were banned from postseason play. And I think going through that makes you appreciate this so much more than I would have if they had not gone through that. And I think it's an important lesson for college basketball fans to understand, is that how hard this is to do. I've made this point so many times on Spaces, but like, imagine, I tell it the same way all the time, but imagine going into a bar in 1990 and banging on it, standing up and saying, hey guys, in the next 30 to 40 years, Duke and UConn are going to win 10 national championships. Indiana is only going to go to 2 more Final Fours. UCLA is only going to go to 3 more Final Fours and only win 1 national championship. And UNLV will be so far off the map that you won't even be able to find them. Like, you would have gotten laughed out of there, And so sustained success is so difficult. And for us to do it to varying degrees over 3 coaching staffs with 3 completely unique flavors and feels about them and their styles of play, and to have it all sort of be this genesis with Dan now, who's just such a perfect fit for the area, for the fan base, and it's just a reflection of them, like, all just sort of balled up into this one man, to kind of see that come into fruition, and then for it to be not just him and the intensity of getting that crowd back, but like how aesthetically pleasing it is to watch. I'm just really focused right now on enjoying it for however long it lasts. Dan, whether, he gets tempted by the NBA or retires, he's not coaching late. He said, hey man, I'm not coaching way into my 60s. So I'm enjoying this while we have it. I hope UConn fans certainly do too. This is the best part of it, and it's that shared experience that you get through this. I've made so many friends over the last however many years and have had so many great experiences, largely tethered and tied to this team. I know I'm not the only one that's had that, but it's just an amazing time to be a UConn fan right now. And I'm just, enjoying everything as much as I possibly can.
Very well said. Make sure you guys go and follow. It's at Hurley Mania. It's at Mr. Hotballs. That is spelled out Mister, not just MR. Period. He is that fancy. Spells out Mr. Gentlemen, appreciate you being here. Make sure you guys tune into the Spaces. It is the best place to get instant reaction on everything UConn. See you guys again next week.